So last week I asked some of my friends to just answer me quickly. Give me something that you think is a boring job. So my social worker friend said, oh, definitely it's the paperwork. My singer-songwriter friend said it was the licensing, the contract, stuff like that. John Taylor's gone. He's a performer. He said, man, it's that long drive home after you've had such an exciting show. And then one friend said peeling vegetables, and she added folding sheets. Now, we have already learned that folding sheets does not qualify as a boring job. So that much we know, right? So I guess the iconic measure of a boring job would be the mythical king. Oh, I just thought I saw John. Sorry, I guess I didn't. The iconic measure of a boring job, what might be the mythical king Sisyphus rolling that rock up the hill throughout eternity. Every time he got to the top, it went back down to the bottom, and he had to start again. Among other things, no doubt that was a boring job. Well, a French thinker, Albert Camus, came along and said, well, actually, we could imagine that Sisyphus was happy. Happy because he had accepted his fate. He had embraced where he was. And so, therefore, however absurd the job was, we might imagine him as happy. Well, I guess I don't know about that. But for Camus, absurdity was just at the core of his thought. And so his interpretation that Sisyphus might be happy is interesting because he said, happiness is actually a revolt against absurdity and meaningless. Well, others come along behind Camus, and they are batting the ball around, and someone says, well, no, he's not happy, he's hopeful. He's hopeful, pushing that rock up the hill, because he has a memory of better days, a memory of where he came from. And so it is that hope that conditions his mind. Well, I don't know if we'll ever know, but people will always talk about it. But one thing I think I know is that hope is essential to our existence. I like that first song we did a few minutes ago, High Steppin'. Such a fun song that kind of brings a little relief in the middle of our times of confusion and anxiety. There's a little boot scooting going on if you ever watch the video. It's a pretty funny video. So whether we're worried about our relationships or we're worried about how to get a little better at managing our finances, whether we're worried about the very complex problems that are in the world, it's nice to get a breather and to listen to some music. But I wonder if you noticed, I bet you did, that the singer says something about hope in the darkness. After he goes through all the list of things that produce anxiety, he talks about hope. There is a version of that song, and I think the words were on the screen, where he goes, well, I don't know if that's true or not, hope. And I think that is a true reflection of how hope kind of ebbs and flows in us. It's hard to hold on to hope sometimes. Well, hope has been called one of the several psychological vehicles that get us from one place to the next. And Xavier, I have a graphic about that, and I want to thank Xavier. I dropped things on him on Saturday, and he and Philip Taylor make it happen. So vehicles, remember we called them psychological vehicles. So here's one, optimism. Okay, next one. Goal setting, that's definitely one. Keep going. Passion. Okay. Grit, got to have that. Good psychological vehicle. Next one. Self-confidence. Yeah, okay. And then hope. And a Volkswagen. For no reason except that it's 11:11. I told you some things are funny around here. So I read this interesting article about these psychological vehicles, and one group of scientists have elevated hope among the rest of them, saying that even though we sometimes think of hope as sort of a second-rate emotion, it's nothing much better than wishful thinking. That's what some people think about it. the scientists say no, hope is kind of like the parent of the other emotions that we've already looked at on the vehicles. Theories that broaden the definition of hope say that hope is both the will, the want, the thing you are hoping for, but also the array of ways to get there. So it is more than just wishful thinking. Now, obviously, we can get all bogged down going through the nuances of, what's the parent, what's the most important, which one drives the bus to get us from one place to the next. And while it is true that all of these things, optimism, grit, self-confidence, and hope, are probably all part of each part of the other, I do think it's important to sort out wishful thinking from that so that we can actually do some things. Hope takes us places because it is not only the will, it is the way. But that all sounds pretty academic, doesn't it? And it's not that we're having so much trouble with the definition of hope. The problem is it's real hard to hold on to. Isn't that right? It's really hard to hold on to it. And so how can we hold on to hope in a world where it's just difficult to make it sometimes? In a world where we're not sure how can we hold on to hope so that we will make plans to make our relationships better? How can we hold on to hope so that we will make plans to amend our financial activities? How can we have hope in a world where it seems like there's no such thing as compromise, where it seems like everything is a zero-sum game, and winner-take-all sort of argument? In a pluralistic society, how in the world can we hold out hope for social justice for everyone when we can't even agree on what is the ultimate value? Well, those are really hard questions. Really hard questions. So no wonder hope eludes us. But since hope is the fuel that takes us toward finding solutions, maybe the best we can do here today in a short time is just to talk about a few things that get in the way of our hope, and maybe also find some things that will help us keep or find hope. And I'm thinking about the stories that Don read. You know that first story, Jesus is with the disciples on the boat, and when John tells that story, Jesus says, throw your nets on the other side. You may have heard that maybe more often than the version we read today where they rowed out into the deep. But anyway, Jesus says, throw your nets on the other side. Well, I'm thinking on one level, that's got to be pretty exasperating to hear. I've presented problems to people before, and the first thing out of their mouth is, well, if you would just, and I'm biting my tongue because I would want to say, if it was just that easy, I would already be doing it. Somebody works on a project that I've worked on a long time ago, and we've been down that road before, and I hear them talking, and I find in myself a difficulty believing that there might be something that I just haven't seen yet. There might be other forces at work. And that's what that fish story does for me. That fish story suggests that there might be things I just haven't seen yet. I do not think that is a story that says just trust Jesus and everything's going to work out. I think we all know that that interpretation promises more than it can deliver, right? But I do think it suggests a faithful remembrance that I just haven't seen everything yet. Things might be going on beyond my purview. And actually, the fact that I don't know everything gives me hope. It's a hopeful idea. Well, the second story is the same, the one about the seed that's growing. When we remember that the Bible is not a science book, it's not trying to talk to us about sun and nutrients and wind and water. It's actually sort of saying the same that the last one did. It's saying that sometimes things go on beyond your vision. That farmer, I love this wording. I probably preached on this sermon 10 times. I hope not in here. It says, whether he slept or whether he waked, all by itself, the seed grew. It's not a magic story. It's not a story that says everything's going to work out no matter what. It is a story that says, I don't know everything. You might be surprised. And I think that's hopeful. I heard some missionaries talking today. They've been working in Ghana. They're about to work in Hanoi. And I thought to myself, this is one more of those times when I get to learn about something really great going on that I had no idea about. That gives me hope. So maybe we can say about all of that, that one thing that gets in the way of hope is forgetting that what we see and know is not all there is to see and know. Well, going another direction, and I want to see how this works for you, I also think that anger can turn into hope. So this guy gets a ticket in New York City. He gets a ticket for driving his bike in a lane other than a bike lane. Well, he gets a $50 ticket. He's really mad about it. He churns about it. He gripes about it. He says, I'm not paying it. Then he says, I'm going to go to court and fight it. And then he just decides, well, that's goofy. That's a waste of time. So he paid it. But he also made a video. Turns out he's a pretty good videographer. I think he actually does it for a living. So he makes a video, and he starts the movie with the policeman rolling down his window, talking to him while the guy's on his bike. And the guy says, the police says, you have to ride your bike in the bike lane only. It's for safety, and it's for legal purposes. Okay. So the guy begins riding his bike all over New York City. And he crashes into all kinds of things that are obstacles in the bike lane. He runs into a trash can. He runs into one of those orange striped barriers. And in the grand finale of the movie, he runs into a police car that is in a bike lane. Now, it's a goofy story. I admit it's over the top. But it suggests to me that anger can be directed towards something that's useful. His point was to sort of challenge this thinking that all rules are meant to be kept no matter what. It's wildly hopeful to me that anger could turn into something useful. So there's that. Maybe we can think that over this week, because I bet we're going to get mad about something. Are y'all? I'm probably going to get mad about something. Yeah. So it's wildly hopeful, and it is a shaft of light. I had to say that because that's the title of my sermon. It's in my notes. It's a shaft of light. That's what hope is. Well, another thing that I think we all could remind ourselves over and over again. This is so simple, but I told you about a friend of mine over in Abilene who used to preach a series of sermons. They were all titled Simple Lessons Easy to Forget. It's great to have the same title over and over because you can put anything in there you want to. But anyway, this is a simple lesson, easy to forget. Conditions do not have to be perfect for there to be hope, obviously. Bearing in mind that hope is both the will and the array of ways, not just one way, the way to get there, I think that we can remember a lot of stories about people who just took hold of things. I think about Chef Jose Andres. After Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, Austin's in here. Austin and I are stonemasons. We built a house in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. When that went on, this chef marshaled 20,000 volunteers to feed people down there. He partnered with restaurants and people who sold food. There were 20,000 volunteers working in Puerto Rico for an extended period of time. Well, not only that, but this calendar year in 2019, when the federal government shut down, he did it again. He partnered with restaurants all over the country and provided food for the federal workers who were not getting a paycheck for those 29 days or however many it was. I mean, conditions are not perfect there, but he just found a way, and he found others to help him. When I was in Brownsville this summer at Matamoros last month, in the middle of all that's happening there, in the middle of displaced people, of overworked officials, of ever-changing policies, in the middle of this cloud of fear and doubt and anxiety that certainly surrounds the people who are migrants, I saw people doing what they could. I've told you about some of them. I visited a respite center, but I haven't told you about a group of people just called Team Brownsville. And on their Facebook page, it says, "We are not a political group. We are not a church. We are not a charity organization. We are human beings helping human beings." And what they do is they work at the foot of the bridge on the Matamoros side, and they feed people. Every day they feed people. We got to work with them one day and provide one of the meals. We took the lunch meal, and they went on and did their evening meal. It's small. It's small. It's a drop in the bucket. It's conditions that are not perfect, but it's people doing what they can. And that whole story reminds me of my final point. Even though hope is sometimes given in the smallest ways or received in the smallest ways, and certainly hope often means doing something that is quite temporary, it still counts. I think we just have to state that obvious thing from time to time to ourselves and to anyone who will hear us. Providing care or solace or assisting someone or some cause in a temporary way is worthwhile. Saving a life, sustaining a life that will one day die still matters. We must not be daunted by the temporary nature of anything. Hope is a noun, it's a verb, it's what we do together. Everything we do is done better together. So we look for hope, and we make hope, and we are hope, and we do hope. And that's who we are right here. Amen.